Thank you. Wonderful to see everyone again. And we are turning the wheel of the Tibetan calendar. Next week is Tibetan New Year. So this is the last talk of this past New Year. And I'd like to acknowledge that in this year, we studied the Heart Sutra for 7 or 8 months. And now we've just studied the loving kindness practice for 3 months. And my purpose in really giving the loving kindness practice a long period of time was to really establish it as a new norm for you. So if I were to say, let's all sit and focus on our breath and calm our minds in the shamatha practice, it would be so easy. Everyone would know what I was talking about and would feel quite at ease. And I wanted you to have the same familiarity and the same ease with the loving kindness practice because they support each other, they balance each other, and they open a pathway for growth. So in our tradition, we often hear, we study the Dharma by listening, contemplating, and meditating. And the listening part is when you hear, let's say, the instructions on the loving kindness practice. Then the contemplating is when you think about it. So you're teaching yourself the practice, you're reflecting on the teachings you've heard, on the readings we've done. And then the third part, the key part, is then meditating. You take it into your own personal meditation and explore it, and it gradually transcends the thinking to actually being. And so this is the key. Once we're familiar with the practice, we keep going with that practice, and over time, it becomes a way you are in the world, a lens. So you're looking at the news and you go into practice. You're with a friend who is hurting in some way and you go into the practice. Again, today we have visuals. I can't help it. It's just, in some ways, easier for us to see some of these things rather than only hear the words about them. And I'm trying to put this into the okay, there we go. All right, there you have the full slide. So, as you know, as we've been working with this loving kindness practice, we have been establishing ourselves in the mindset of what true loving kindness is as a heart-mind state. And then we've been strengthening ourselves in that state and then allowing that state to go out and meet the different beings who arise in our field of experience. And we start out on the meditation cushion, and eventually, as we become the practice, it's how we interact with people, how we interact with the world. And underlying this practice is the view of Buddha nature. So I think Peggy was remarking last week that when we're introduced to the potential of having a vast capacity, it's such a surprise. And we often feel as though other people can do that, great, great beings can do that, but maybe not me. And that's so common as we're stepping into the practice. But the underlying principle that we're working with is that we all have the seed of Buddha nature. And that seed of Buddha nature, it's the same in our greatest meditation masters, the Dalai Lama, and here we have His Holiness Jetsun Rinpoche, and ourselves. It's exactly the same. Our potential and the potential of those magnificent beings who are able to embody loving kindness, same potential. And then we can allow ourselves to work with our traumas and our wounds after we've built up towards that, because from the principle of Buddha nature, our greatest hero or Shiro has Buddha nature. We have Buddha nature, and the most difficult person in our lives has Buddha nature. And Buddha nature, that seed of potential, is the same. Whether we're able to clear away our obstacles that cover our Buddha nature, whether we engage in Dharma practice to remove those coverings to our Buddha nature, that's up to us. And the wonderful thing about this is it's such a source of confidence in our practice. There's a sense that we're not always trying to be like someone else and failing. Rather, the Dharma is a pathway that is growing our capacity, and that capacity doesn't have any limits or boundaries. So that's the good news of Dharma practice. And then today, I thought about how we could unite the studies we've been doing this year, that of the Heart Sutra and the loving kindness practice. And I went back to a wonderful koan that comes from the Zen or Chan tradition. And it addresses the capacity of Avalokiteshvara in the Heart Sutra that we just read. Remember, there's a mention of Shariputra asking Avalokiteshvara. And Avalokiteshvara is the emanation of compassion. So what does compassion have to do with emptiness? Why do we talk about the ultimate bodhicitta or compassion being inseparable from emptiness? And to help us understand this, I referenced a koan, as I was saying, that describes an interaction between a student and a meditation master. And the reason koans are really, really interesting is because you can't think them out. In the Tibetan tradition, we have lots of mind training practices and intellectual practices that approach emptiness. But in the koan tradition, they were saying, okay, to make that leap from intellectual understanding to being, we have to essentially break our minds. We have to free ourselves from that quality of mind that always wants to understand conceptually and figure things out. So I'm going to put the koan on the screen, and we'll look at that koan together, and then we'll go into the practice, bringing it home. Oh, I should say, in the Chan tradition, the actual meditation practice is shamatha, as we've been doing, that moves into greater degrees of understanding that we might call Dzogchen or Mahamudra. But the practice is the same practice that we are familiar with. And then post-meditation, the practice is reflecting on these koans that can't be solved by our intellect. Let's see if I can find it. Try again. This is a very beautiful koan. It's called the Uggen's Hands and Eyes. Okay, here it is. So it starts with an instruction. The entire body is an eye, there is no seeing. The entire body is an ear, there is no hearing. The entire body is a mouth, there is no speaking. The entire body is a mind, there is no thinking. Putting aside for the time being the matter of the entire body, just listen. I can send you this text so you don't have to copy it down. Putting aside for a time the matter of the entire body. If you suddenly do not have eyes, how do you see? If you do not have ears, how do you hear? If you do not have a mouth, how do you speak? If you do not have a mind, how do you think? If you are able here to produce a single way, you practice together with the ancient Buddhas. Leaving aside matters of practice, just tell me, who will you practice under? Now comes the interchange with the student and the master. Ungen asked Dogo, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with all his hands and eyes? So think about that depiction of Avalokitesvara with the 1,000 arms and the eye in the hand of each of those 1,000 arms. What does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with all his hands and eyes? Dogo said, it's like a person groping for his pillow in the middle of the night. Ungen says, I understand. Dogo says, how do you understand? Ungen says, the whole body is hands and eyes. Dogo says, what you say is very well said. However, you only succeeded in saying 8 parts. Ungen said, how is it for you? Dogo says, throughout the body is hands and eyes. Whole body, that's it. Throughout the body, that's it. Although you may have brought something forth, it's still 100,000 miles removed. Beating its wings, the rock disappears, the clouds in 6 directions, driving the wind to blow away the water of the 4 seas. So the rock is a huge bird driving away the clouds. What is this dust that has suddenly appeared? Have those fine hairs not yet stopped? Don't you see how the jeweled net is let down to produce endless reflections? Where do the hands and eyes at the top of the stick come from? So the teacher is telling the student that if you only have 8 parts out of 10, even though it's well said, even though it's wise, you have missed being. If you missed being by a hair's breadth, if you have a hair's breadth of conceptuality still creating dust, still creating fine hairs, you're not being. So the question would be repeated, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with all his hands and eyes. So remember, you can't figure this out with your mind. You're not meant to figure it out. The Koan tradition invites you to contemplate the story until all of a sudden conceptuality drops away because you can't figure it out with your intellect. Okay, hope you're intrigued, but let's put the story down. And I invite you to go into the loving kindness meditation, fortified with confidence that it's a path that you will traverse from the listening, contemplating, and being, and that you have the same capacity as any of the great masters. So each one in their own way. I'll just repeat the key directions of the practice. Sitting in a meditation posture, sitting in the posture of the Buddha with the right hand on the knee and the left hand in your lap, also smiling. You call to mind an experience of loving kindness and let that pervade your mind, your heart, your body. Focusing on what loving kindness feels like and letting the story drop away. You're invited to really sit with this until it is in your bones. The average time would be for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks, so that you really have that sense of the beingness of the felt sense of loving kindness. When that feels very strong, like a well that is full and gushing over, then you allow your imagination to also overflow and allow that overflow in your own way into your community. It can be your family meal table. It can be your community of friends, your town. We talked about last week that you're increasing to limitless, but you start with one person at a time. And your imagination will always provide you with people that are easy, people that are neutral, and people that are difficult. We don't have to worry about that. The nuance that comes from Lord Jigten Sumgön, the founder of the Drikung, is every time you feel that hesitation, that of fear arising or a narrowing, not quite unconditionally flowing, a little bit of waning, then you go back to the well, replenishing strength and confidence as well, and then allowing the spiral to begin again. My experience is that they're ever-changing people. You don't have to do it the same way twice. And then if you have, let's say, a day to practice and there's a difficult person, then we refer to all the different teachings on how you might work with that for a little longer period, just out of curiosity, looking at your internal obstacles to being open. And we always have the caveat that many people have experienced trauma in your life, and you can set aside the trauma until you're working with hand in hand, either a very good therapist or experienced meditator. You have choice always in how you're approaching this meditation. But let's enjoy the familiarity that you now have and the confidence that you have in how you're approaching this practice. And say, let's have about 10 minutes. Now, in the koan tradition, while people are meditating, one by one, they might go into the teacher's room and they might work with the same koan for a decade. And the back and forth with the teacher is like the story of Ungen and Dogo, in the sense that the teacher might ask a question and be able to discern when the student has let go of a conceptual response or intellectual response. So here's Avalokitesvara with the 1,000 arms and the eye in the palm of each hand. And then to the right is a railway station in Kyoto that has 1,000 Avalokiteshvaras. So just as you're sitting here fresh from meditation, I'll ask you about the interchange. What does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with his hands and eyes? It's like a person groping for a pillow in the middle of the night. What is your first response after hearing it's like a person groping for his pillow in the middle of the night? So it's a spontaneous response. What are your...
Limited.
What came to you in your spontaneous response? Annie?
That they use all their hands and eyes to dispense wisdom.
Other folks, just, there's no right or wrong. It's gradually using the story to move away from concepts. So just in the moment, what does Avalokitesvara do with all those hands and eyes? Jim?
There is no one there.
I'm still looking for the pillow, half awake.
It's quite a really interesting image, isn't it?
Comfort.
When you're asleep, you don't have to think about where your pillow is. You just reach. Other folks, what was your just spontaneous?
Comfort. In French, it's réconfort. Comforting.
Reaching.
Again, no right, no wrong. And it's not a test. You don't have to answer. Charlie.
Not sure about spontaneity. This came to me in the middle of the night when I woke. She brightens the moonlight. There is no word that describes her embrace.
I hope you're preserving your poetry, Charlie. Other reflections this morning?
I was gonna say, kind of like a center or connection.
Uh-huh. I am going to give the full koan to Annie, and if you would just send it out to Sunday Dharma folks, Annie, I'll email it to you. So this lunar year is closing. We're approaching the lunar year of the fire horse. We will have a meditation for the morning of the new year, which is next Wednesday, and the Zoom codes were in the recent newsletter, and they're also on the homepage of our website. And then I will be going off for 2 months of retreat, and I've invited some of the folks who've been studying with Vajradakini a while to continue leading this particular practice and to review some of the important passages from the Pema Chodron book, as well as the contemplative reading practice that we did when I was on retreat in the fall. So just after the new year, I will be in retreat. It's considered, the first 100 days are considered very special Dharma days. So I'll be thinking of all of you. And yes, Jim.
Can you send via email the 16 breaths according to Garchen Rinpoche out to? I'm not able to find it easily wherever it may be.
I'll ask. I'll put what Jim is referring to is the Anapanasati Sutra. This is a sutra practice that we have been specializing in under the instructions of His Holiness Chetseng Rinpoche. And he's given this practice after really looking at how are we all doing. The diaspora from Tibet that started in 1959 introduced the Tibetan Buddhism to the world, but it took it from one culture of monastic retreat practice to iPads, iPhones, commercials, our minds. And his evaluation was to return to the Buddha's instruction. And in particular, we're working with the translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi, who was the master translator of sutras into English. So this particular instruction came from the Buddha, translated it by a contemporary English scholar, and then after consulting with him, we also made it gender neutral in that he translated it in the 70s when he or they was meant to infer universal, and it doesn't read that way anymore. But that practice, I generally teach it in retreat, and there is a retreat coming up this May. May 24th to June 2nd. Again, this whole issue of listening, thinking about it, and then becoming the practice, the becoming aspect is something you experience in retreat. And so His Holiness felt that 10 days was enough time for the mind to let go of its agitated producing of thoughts, settle, and then really begin to understand the foundation of mindfulness presented by the Buddha. That was his practice, really. It's really what all the monks and nuns were practicing, and what he taught directly, that over time were developed by different enlightened masters into, let's say, Chan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, all the forms of Buddhism that we encounter now. So you do have the opportunity to come to that retreat, and that is also on the Vajradakini website. As a Sangha, we're practicing shamatha, and as you grow in your shamatha practice, it's a wonderful reference. And you remember that we spent almost a year and a half on the text written by Trungpa Rinpoche on shamatha practice. So there's the practice, there are commentaries and resources, but then you take it home into your cushion and move from hearing and thinking to being. Other questions? Other reflections about your experience of the loving kindness practice? Michelle?
Something new happened to me this morning. Sorry. This image popped up that I had not received in my childhood, the loving kindness. And I saw my parents with their serious faces, but instantly the image transformed and became my parents having a smile. And this became the source. So the smile is the main tool. That's not the right word, but the main for me for the practice this morning. It was a gift.
You know, in our complicated relationships, it really can be a very special gift. And it's interesting to me that another nuance of Lord Jigten Sumgun's instruction is to smile as we practice this practice, to intentionally smile and just experience the shift that that makes. Other reflections this morning?
As I was sending bodhicitta to quite a few different people, an image arose of my daughter beside me with her hands open to receive. So that's a new one.
You know, that's so lovely. We all know, even in the best of mother-daughter relationships are complicated. Jerry, did you want to say something? You're unmuted.
I had more of a question. How do you keep from, in loving kindness, becoming overly attached?
Oh, that is one of the near enemies. Very interesting that Venerable Pema points that out. Essentially, being alert while you're practicing. So there are two ways that, or there are multiple ways that this can arise, but things to watch for instance, Annie was asking last week something about needing to fill up with self-compassion. And there are times in our lives when we have less confidence, let's say, and in that point where you feel depleted, it's so important to fill up, but it also feels really good. So at a certain point, it becomes indulgent just to fill up. And to just say, oh, this feels good, I want to stay here. And that's only something we can recognize ourselves, that, oh, I notice I'm filling up for the sake of filling up, not because I'm feeling depleted. And the other is we have attachments in our lives to, very close loved ones. And there's a sense of understanding how this attachment isn't an obstacle, but a teaching. So let's say if I'm thinking of, someone I'm really close to, first of all, just allowing that ease of flow of the loving kindness and staying in that state of loving kindness. And essentially, we can say, oh, okay, this is my capacity. I can feel and show unconditional love relative to this person. And then it becomes useful because then if I were to switch to the grocery clerk, can I have the same degree of unconditional love? So instead of allowing the attachment to become a deeper and deeper attachment as practitioners, we say, okay, this is my capacity at this time. Can I, the difficult cousin, the grocery clerk, the stranger in the crowd, can I open with my full capacity to anyone I encounter? So it's attachment is an obstacle only if we allow ourselves to be stuck with the attached person, as opposed to using it as, oh, this is the depth, and how do I open that depth up to everyone that I encounter?
Thank you.
It looks like Ashanti put the 16 breaths in the chat. Jim, if you want to see that.
I saw it and I copied it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Great. And every time I prepare for a retreat, I clean up the prayer book a little more. I find little errors, so I'll still send the current version that I've looked at very carefully. Okay, if you want to do the dedication prayers. Nancy.
I just wanted to say and share that I've had the opportunity to do the retreat twice with Kenmo, and I found it really catapulted me forward. And I was very, very happy I was able to do that. And if you can at all find the intention to do it, please sign up. And I think there might be some partial scholarship possibly, so don't let that get in your ways. But if you have the inner motivation, I'd encourage you to sign up and let things fall into place that you could come. Thank you. I just want to say that about the retreat.
I took the training with His Holiness, the teacher training, 3 times. Just like this practice, there are no boundaries to our growth and development, and this is a particularly effective presentation that comes from the vastness of his mind to what is needed, particularly today. Okay, Annie, if you'd put the dedication up. Thanks.
Dorje, yeah, got it, sorry. Dorje Chang, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gompopa, Phagma Drupa, and Lord Drakumpa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve omniscience, and may all who travel on the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase, higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health, I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. For this realm, encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. Embodiment of the 3 precious jewels, Padmapani, who holds the teachings of the victorious one, seeing the all-goodness meaning with the wisdom eye, may you who are spontaneously established activities live long for hundreds of kalpas. Noble Manjushri, the Lord of Speech, who manifests to hold the teachings of the Triple Gem, who raises the lamp of the sage's teachings, may you who are the light of the Dharma live long for hundreds of kalpas. The one known in the Holy Land as Aryadeva emanated into the Gar clan of eastern Tibet as Chidingpa, the heart son of Jigten Sumgan. May the life of glorious Garchen remain steadfast for 100 eons. Vajradakini Nunnery is located on the unceded land of the Wabanaki people, in a state that participated in the transatlantic slave trade. We recognize our own contributions to division and strife amongst people and harm to the planet through our words, actions, or indifference. Bodhicitta is ever near at hand, inspiring us to open fully with compassion. Listening to cries of suffering and seeing all who are struggling, we turn towards reconciliation with ourselves and with one another, especially those who obstruct us, knowing that humanity is one entire fabric. All our threads are needed to make life whole, healthy, and contented on Mother Earth. We are grateful for the gift of Sangha and for the bonds of Dharma exploration that unite us. May we generate compassion and peace as we go forth today, moving mindfully, harming none.
I put a link to the full case that has the section, the instruction on emptiness at the beginning. And it also includes a commentary from the Zen tradition in the chat. So you're welcome to easily get the full case. And see you Tuesday at our morning meditation, maybe on New Year's morning. But this will be the last Sunday until April. But we will still have wonderful review and practice classes in between. So take care.
Thank you, everyone.